talk, talking crime, cases, and backing the blue. Now, here are your hosts, Captain Ed Mehmet and Detective Kevin Schroeder.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host. I'm here, my co-host, Captain Ed Mehmet.
Hello, WABC listeners and YouTube viewers. Today we have a very, very special session with two very, very interesting guys. And I'm sure you will enjoy this.
So today we have two guests. First guest we have here is rock legend Stevie Van Zandt. He's also a Rock and Roll Hall of Famer, and he's also pro law enforcement. And we also have Curtis Sliwa here, who will be running for mayor. And also he's a part of the WABC family here. He's on the Rip and Read every day, 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, 12 noon to 1 p.m. But let me correct that. Curtis is on every day, every hour of the WABC broadcast, because anytime you tune in, 2 in the morning, 3 in the afternoon, Curtis is on, because he's always filling in for someone. So, gentlemen, welcome.
Nice to be here. Nice to be back.
Yeah, nice to be back. Stevie, you were on the show about 2 years ago when we were in a basement starting out, and now we're here with WABC Radio. And Curtis, you've been on before as well, correct?
That's correct. Reminding Captain Mamet that he gave me my first wooden shampoo at the 69th precinct when I got my first JD card. Don't lie, Cap.
See, Brooklyn cop thing.
No comment.
Stevie, so how long you been living in the city, New York City?
Oh, man, long time. I moved from Asbury during the darkness sessions, so since the late 70s.
Late 70s, okay.
Yeah, I mean, off and on.
40 years plus.
Yeah.
Now, how have you seen a change? I mean, I'm sure you've seen dramatically change for the past 40 years. So, why don't you tell us about that?
The 70s was no bargain, as I recall.
Yeah, true.
You know, it was pretty ugly back then, but then it got good. You know, I think actually Rudy Giuliani, who you know was a friend at the time, and did a good job with the city. You know, before he kind of went over the hill and lost it a little bit. But in those days, you know, he had some good ideas. You know, the philosophy of, you know, he's fixed the little things and the big things a little bit, you know, get a little bit easier. You know, you set a sort of certain tone for the town. Right. You know, I think that philosophy was a good idea. You know, that has since disappeared. You don't let the little crimes go be ignored. You know, do everything from the bottom up, and I think that sets a certain, you know, tone for the city that was very healthy. But lately, you know, it's been very, very weird. You know, I've been talking about this homeless situation now for decades. We just keep ignoring it, and it just gets worse and worse. You know, it's like the California fires. You know, just keep ignoring it. You know, see what happens, right?
Curtis is the expert on that.
You know, yeah. I mean, you know. 50 years, I'm hearing about the California fires every year. I'm like, you know, it can't be that difficult. There's got to be a solution to this.
It's
right?
a desert, Steve.
You know? Yeah, but still.
They should never have built in the desert.
True, but I don't care. I don't care what the problem is. There's always a solution, you know. And if you ignore it long enough, this is what happens. You know, you lose an entire town. Well, that's kind of what's happening here with the homeless situation. You know, the politicians you talk to, they think the answer is affordable housing. You know, and that's just not accurate. You know, these people need services. You know, they need the housing, of course, but they need services to go along with it. These people are mentally ill. I mean, I've dealt with a lot of them for a long time. A very, very, very large percentage of them are ex-military. You know, and I mean, you know, with all of our words about how we support the military, we're not very good when they get home. You know, right. And it's always bothered me. But basically, you have a lot of mentally ill on the streets, and they, you know, to some extent, they're dangerous. You know, I couldn't leave my wife in my apartment when I toured. I get her another apartment 5 blocks away.
Wow.
You know, to the old village where it was still safe.
And it was a big difference 5 blocks away?
Yes, just across 7th Avenue. It's like the old village.
Yeah, right.
I'm on the other side of 6th Avenue by the park.
Yep.
You know, and 3 different occasions. You know, mentally ill, put their hands on my wife. You know, nothing serious, thank God, but that's all you got to do is put your hands on my wife, you know. And, I wasn't around, obviously, but and the crime, you know, in my neighborhood also very bad. you know, I mean, I come out the other day, you know, and the guy shooting up on my stoop, you know, right on my stoop, and this kid's in my building, you know.
Yeah.
1:00 in the afternoon, you know. So I mean, things have gotten a little too loose, and it's a holistic problem. It's not just one problem. I realize, you know, we don't have enough police, we don't have enough judges, we don't have enough jail cells. I mean, you know, et cetera, right? It's a bigger problem, you know, than maybe, you know, there's not an easy solution, but there is a solution. But first we have to recognize the problem, and then we have to, you know, attack it. But there seems to be an attitude of a very, 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 you know, an attitude of denial, basically. You know, I don't know where people who are in the, you know, the group that runs things in New York, you know, I don't know where they live, but my neighborhood has gone down, and you know, Greenwich Village was the best neighborhood in New York.
Well, Curtis is the expert on the homeless and the mentally ill, right, Curtis?
Oh, all the time.
Talks about it all the time.
I know them by first name, many of them. But it's interesting because we don't want to deal with mental health. You know, the recent movie about Bob Dylan, one of the opening scenes, he dreamed of meeting Woody Guthrie, greatest folk singer in American history. This land is your land, my land. Lived in Coney Island, followed the communist philosophy, but a great artist. He was in Greystone. I've been to Greystone. That was an ominous facility, those old-style brick and mortar, like Shawshank Redemption. They'd scare the bejeebers out of you in New Jersey. Creedmoor, he was in Creedmoor. And he went in for mental health checks, tune-ups. We do that physically, like if you have a goiter problem. I don't know where your goiter is. I'm not even going to try to find your goiter. But the doctor says, Stevie, you got a goiter problem. I got to check you into NYU, or I got to check you into Columbia Presbyterian. You go in. So if you told your friends, I'm in there to get checkups, you know, I have a goiter. Oh, yeah, that's good, Stevie. But if you checked yourself into like Creedmoor or Greystone or any mental health facility, people don't want to talk about it. Even though we're in Manhattan, the wealthiest borough in New York City and the world. And every rich person has a shrink or a psychologist, and they brag about it. You know, once a week I'm on the couch. Yeah, but you're a billionaire. Well, how do you think I'm a billionaire? Because they straighten me out once a week. But when you're blue-collar working class, if you were to say to somebody, I'm going for psychiatric care, I'm going for mental health therapy, it's like you're a pariah. They don't want to have anything to do with you. You would be surprised at how many people, just like all of us, are in those facilities because their mother died, right? Their mother died, and they never recovered from it, and they have anxiety and depression, and they're danger to themselves and then everyone else. Nobody wants to talk about these issues. I talk about it all the time because I live amongst these people, and they're no different than us. My dad used to tell me, there by the grace of God go you, Curtis. Don't ever make fun of these people. We don't know what they went through to get them to this point. It's our responsibility to help them.
And as I say, many of them, as you meet them, I'm sure you found the same thing. A lot of them are ex-military.
Yeah.
You know? So they have that PTSD, you know, thing from witnessing war, you know. And they're there on our behalf, right? You know, we send them there, and then we don't take care of them when they come back. You know, it's terrible.
We don't take care of our own.
Tunnel to Tower, which was created after the attack on 9/11, the Steven Siller Foundation. You know, the young man who ran into the fire and then was consumed. He was there to help his fellow firefighters and cops. They're now providing housing for veterans all over the country. What the hell is our government doing? Why should a private foundation have to move in and provide housing for veterans, whether they served in peace or wartime? That should be like a guarantee first up in the queue. Before you give housing to a migrant, you're going to give housing to a veteran. No doubt. I'm in the subways all the time, and they'll show you their ID so you know they're not, you know, they're fugazi. Look, I served them, and they show you, and they're crying. I can't even get into a shelter, Curtis. I'm a veteran. I can't even get it, and they live in squalor in the subways. Yeah. Shame on all of us for allowing that.
True. Cap?
Curtis, it's no secret that you want to run for mayor. Now, when you become mayor, what would you do about the homeless and emotionally disturbed problem?
It's not as difficult as they make it out to be. First of all, you know I'm running for mayor because I got to get a brand new beret. It's my campaign beret. My youngest son, Hunter, said, "Hey, Dad, if you're running for mayor, you need a new beret."
Will you wear the red beret when you're mayor?
Dad, damn right.
And a suit.
Yeah, suit, whatever it takes. But this represents to people that we're there to help those that cannot help themselves. When they see the red beret in the subways or the streets or the parks, especially the emotionally disturbed and the homeless, they know we're there to help. So the first thing you have to do is you have to make sure that nobody is sleeping in the subway. You're going to put them, right? The Roosevelt Hotel, right? They're going to soon have the migrants out of there. Put them in the Roosevelt Hotel. Let them live a normal life. Get them on track. Give them their services, their medication. Many of them, they need the medication to normalize themselves. It's the least we can do, but we don't do that. And then we have some people who say it's their First Amendment right to live in squalor, their own defecation, urine. If we saw a baby with a dirty water diaper in the subway, we'd want to call child welfare and DIFAS. How could they? Some of these men and women have lost control of their mental faculties. I see them banging their heads on the side of a train. I see them doing bizarre things to themselves, and they're frightening to everyone else. Why do we leave them there? Why? And you know what? There's a whole institution that makes millions of dollars counting them, rating them, talking about what we should be doing for them, and they do, as we say in the streets, ugats. They do bupkis.
This is part of the problem. Part of the problem.
Curtis, how would you address this crime in the subway? I mean, do you like Hochul's plan? Did you hear, Hochul's plan?
Who was that again?
Governor Hochul, her plan of flooding the subways with police officers.
The woman who was on the subways taking selfies?
Exactly.
Take another selfie.
Exactly.
Crime is down 48%. Yeah, with 12 state troopers around there, all armed.
How would you address the crime in the subway?
Well, it's very simple. They're finally starting to understand. First of all, you need more cops. You only have 32,500 cops. How many places can you move them from spot to spot?
Well, it's going to get less unless something's done.
And not only that, you need cops who actually put a hat on, who look like cops, who aren't staring into their cell phones, sexting and texting people. I walk up to them, Stevie. They look at me 5 minutes later. "Oh, Curtis, I could have capped you right in the head. You wouldn't have even known it." They're sexting and texting. I never see supervisors down there.
With the
in all
fairness, with the cell phone, though, now they use the cell phone instead of a memo book. So when they're looking at the cell phone, not saying they're not looking at Instagram, but they are making reports and getting notifications from the precinct. That's how they communicate now. My day, they came by and scratched you or memo book.
Cut the
paperwork.
Cut the paperwork. Right. This is ridiculous. And you got to fight. You got to fight for the cops. We have politicians who want police security. And the first thing they do is they undercut the police. Well, take away their police security. Make them ride the subways. Every elected official, anyone who works for government, should have to prove that they're using the subways and buses. And you know how quickly that'll get fixed up? Like that. But none of them use it. Every day I'm in the subways, I never see any of them. Never.
Steve, you had a problem where you lived. You hired private security when you had a problem near your home, and the police were not doing anything.
Yeah, it got so
Can
bad.
You tell us about that?
I had to do that. Yeah, I had to do that for a while, but I was hoping the neighborhood would chip in, at some point, which they never did. So I couldn't keep it up permanently. But I had Kevin helped me out, with his people, and we had to sort of set the ship right, in the right direction at least.
It was set right,
and they did a good job. Yeah. But a month or two after it stops, it comes back.
Comes right back. But and there wasn't enough police personnel in that precinct to have cops on the street at that time.
Look, it's a bigger conversation than we can have right now. But you got two levels of our problems. The first level is the immediate, the ones that Curtis is talking about, that he would have to deal with, as mayor, which is getting them off the street, getting homeless off the street, and. But there's the bigger issue is the homeless industrial complex, okay, who are basically getting paid on a per bed basis, right? That's how they make the money, I believe there's 70 different organizations, and I mean all of this is at best temporary, and enough with even those kind of solutions. We need real solutions, okay? And I got a book I'm half done with. Eventually, I'll get done with it, but each chapter is a different issue. And my homeless issue is about creating transitional villages, which is, I believe, what we need is the real long-term solution, okay? Outside of the city, the whole concept of integrating the homeless within the city to raise their quality of life, which was the concept of the homeless organizations 30 years ago, has failed. Okay, all it does is bring down the rest of the community to a lower level of quality of life. What we need is transitional villages that are outside of town. And that's where they would have really good housing, not shelters, but really good housing, serious housing with serious services, mental health services, doctors, nurses, job training, English, language training, all the basics that we would need for people who are not quite ready for society. Literally, they would be a transitional village. You would go there, get taken care of. Once you got yourself back together, you come back into society. And that's how it should work in my opinion. And these transitional villages, every single major city should have them. And it's also a way of integrating, refugees if we have them, or immigrants if we have them. Immigration is a whole nother discussion I'm sure we will have in a minute. But, we all know we need immigrants, okay? But the key to immigration is integration, assimilation, all right? We need a plan, all right? They need to have a job. we need to place them in a job, or maybe it's a school, or maybe whatever the position is. But, we can't have what's going on now, okay, which is just, letting everybody in and then trying to figure it out later,
On that,
No way.
Curtis,
for the homeless, we used to have Camp LaGuardia.
I was just about to talk
Started
to you
by
about that.
Fiorello LaGuardia. This is when men mostly have alcohol problems. In the Depression, they couldn't find work. They were living in shacks all along the West Side Highway. So they'd send them up to Camp LaGuardia, which is in Orange County. So when I ran against Eric Adams the last time, I said we should revive Camp LaGuardia. It was an old hotel. They lived in the hotel. They grew crops. They learned trade. There was no way to get booze up there. Back then, it was in the middle of nowhere. Now there's density housing. So the county executive in Orange County said, well, we don't want Camp LaGuardia again. I said, I get it. It's all dense. Up in the Adirondacks, you could drive for miles in upstate New York. It's like Deliverance. There's nobody. You got places that are great. You get them there, fresh air, good food, away from all the temptations and vices of the city, and they may never want to come back. I would suggest they not come back, because you come into the city, if you have any weaknesses, it's like you're crawling into the belly of the beast. All your old friends, you know where to cop drugs, the bar, the gin mill. Hey, good to see you, Tommy. Hey, this one's on me. And all of a sudden, you're back at it. You're back. There are so many places that we could send people to not only rehabilitate, but to actually live a brand new life and give them a negotiable skill, of which we don't have enough Americans who have.
That's the key. Because right now, you're getting, everybody who gets released from prison, I believe that the last statistic I saw, and Curtis, you might know better than me, something like 1 out of 2 or 1 out of 3 of the beds are taken by prisoners coming out of jail.
Because their families don't want them.
You know what I mean? So they need transition. I mean, our prison system, a whole nother chapter in my book. We need an entirely different prison system. The prison system is ridiculous. We are, this close to the barbaric, and forget about, the privatization insanity. Okay, nothing crazier than the privatization of prisons. I mean, that and driverless cars, they're neck and neck. With the stupidest fucking ideas ever. Oh, can I say fuck on your podcast?
Fine.
Oh, good.
The podcast.
I mean, driverless cars. That's what we should be spending billions of dollars on, huh? You're putting like 10 million people out of work. Anyway, but the privatization of prisons is just the craziest thing ever. Hey, let's make crime profitable. Well, it's the same thing for the homeless. You make homeless profitable. That shouldn't be. It should
Speaking
be
of
taken
profits, speaking of Curtis, when you're mayor, how would you finance it? Where would the money come from?
You mean to house the homeless, to get the mentally ill services?
Up in the Adirondacks. Would that be the state's money or the city's money?
Well, it's a combination of both. It's both our issues. So, for instance, we have mental health care facilities. They're only 30% occupied. 70% of the space in the state mental health facilities are empty, and they want to keep it that way. There are enough people in our city alone who could fill those spots and begin the process of recovery. That's number one. Look how much we spend to arrest them, incarcerate them, turn them loose, just endlessly, wasting the time of the police, everyone. All the elected officials. We should have mental health experts out there. I agree. But you haven't done it yet. What are you waiting for? They love to beat up on the cops and say the cops are not prepared to deal with it. Well, where are the nurses and doctors and the shrinks and psychologists that you should have hired to go out there and deal with them first? They never produce it. They love to talk it. But again, this all comes down to using the system. If you're always in a Uber or a Lyft or a stretch limo or a taxi cab and you never use mass transportation, you have no idea how bad it is down there.
I'll tell you where the money comes from. It comes from the $3 billion they're spending on immigration in this town.
I was going to say the same thing.
Okay? All right? $3 billion. All right? Now, like I said, some of it is necessary. Not $3 billion. All right, we could take $1 billion of that and fix our entire homeless problem, and then some. And then still take care of the immigrants in a proper way. We're not doing anybody a favor by saying, "Come in," and we ghettoize them because there's no place for them to go. Half of them don't speak English, right?
True.
And we'll figure it out later. Here's a credit card. Here's a bicycle. Come back in 6 months to court, and we'll see what we can do. That's insane. And I mean, it's just you can see the problem. We saw it in an exaggerated way in Germany a few years ago. And, I know her heart was in the right place. She lets in 1 million refugees at once. I mean, what the hell do you expect to happen? You got to integrate immigrants, or else you're bringing in people who are immediately not going to be helpful to themselves or our society. You're not helping anybody by doing that, So we got to be a little bit more logical and sensible and middle of the road when it comes to these issues. The extreme right, doesn't want any immigrants. The extreme left wants everybody can open the door and come in. Yeah. There's a nice middle ground.
Absolutely.
Yes, of course we need immigrants, they do the jobs that we don't want to do, frankly, and that's true in every country. And that's all right. Because there's a transition into citizenship, That's all right. Yeah. But we got to be sensible about it. We got to plan these things, not just like hope it, let them in and hope it works out.
Common sense.
But I'm telling you, $3 billion a year, I believe, is the number that we're spending in New York.
Yeah, well,
how much that could be used for?
First place they were. Remember, used to watch Joe Franklin. I'm sure you watched Joe Franklin.
Sure.
Superstation, WWOR, Channel 9, Secaucus. And the commercial was the Milford Plaza, remember?
Right.
Come to the Milford Plaza, $49.99, champagne, shrimp, steak. And everyone around the country planned a trip to Broadway. You're going to see a show, shop. They planned this for the whole year. That's the first place Eric Adams brought him from the Port Authority, the Milford Plaza. $400 a night. These are Venezuelans. They would have swept the streets if you told them, hey, you sleep here, you got to clean the street. Oh, we can't let them volunteer. And then they said, what do I do with the bagel and the schmear? Right? What's the bagel? We don't eat bagels and schmear. So they ordered them culturally appropriate food, con arroz habichuelas, beans and rice. And then Jose said, wow, they're really generous. Could you throw a chuleta in on that, a pork chop? Absolutely, Grubhub it. You spoiled them from day one. Why would they want to go out and do anything? They said, wow, in America, they give you everything for free. We destroyed it. And then naturally now we got to sort out who are the good, who are the bad hombres, send the bad hombres back, keep the good. Because you mentioned L.A. Who do you think is going to clean up that mess out there? It ain't going to be the sons and daughters of the people that lost those homes. They're too busy doing their Game Boy. It's going to be all the illegal aliens they pick up at Home Depot. $80 a day, a box lunch. You want gloves? You want hazmat suits? No, let's work. You're going to have all those illegal aliens out there doing that work. Nobody seems to understand.
Yeah.
There's work they'll do. As you said, Stevie, my 3 sons, are you kidding? They'll look at me like, what? What do you want me to do, Daddy? That's not for me.
I'm sorry. Everybody, what I don't like about what's going on right now is, ICE is basically picking up these people by going into workplaces. Well, that means they're working, doesn't it? You know what I mean? I'm not sure that should be our first choice. I mean, if they're criminals, that's one thing. Obviously the criminals should go. But if they're working, I think that's kind of like half the problem's already being solved, isn't it? You know what I mean? You don't want to throw them out. You want to make them citizens. You know what I mean? That's so there should be a little bit of a thought process here about, who exactly we're taking. You know what I mean? If you're taking people off the street, or out of prisons because they're criminals, and deporting them, that's one thing. Going into workplaces to find these people is kind of a little bit, wait a minute, let's think about this for a sec. Why are they there? Well, obviously somebody's hiring them because they need them, right? Why are they working? And so I mean, we just need to be a little bit careful about this stuff. If they're working already, I say, make them citizens. But be careful who we let in and make sure we have a job for them. That's the key, because there's jobs that are needed. We need these people for sure, and and they will become a welcome part of our society, as we always have done here. That's what America's all about.
Well, look at in Jersey, these Gavons there think that a tomato is a fruit. That's like their number 2 vegetable product, right? For us, it's a vegetable. For guys in Jersey, tomatoes are fruit. Who's going to pick all the tomatoes when they're ripe? You think you guys and me and our sons and daughters are going to go pick the tomatoes in a tomato patch? Never. They'll rot on the vine. You got to have people who are willing, and that's hard work.
Yeah, it's true. No one's going to do it.
Work.
This National Foster Care Month, Marine Toys for Tots is providing hope to children who need it most. Staff Sergeant James Caldwell, who grew up in foster care himself, shares that while handing out gifts at a Toys for Tots distribution event, a little girl looked up at him, reached into her bag, pulled out a stuffed animal and said, "Someone needs to make sure you get a toy too." That simple gesture embodies the heart of Marine Toys for Tots, ensuring every child, including those in foster care, experiences the kindness that can transform their future. Visit toysfortots.org today.
Hank's the family fixer, always with his tool belt. But living with prostate cancer, he needed help. He asked his doctor about Xtandi and enzalutamide. Xtandi 40 milligram tablets treats men with prostate cancer that has spread to other parts of the body and responds to a medical or surgical treatment to lower testosterone. Xtandi may cause serious side effects: seizure, a brain condition called PRESS, allergic reactions, heart disease that can lead to death, falls and bone fractures, swallowing problems, or choking that can lead to death. Stop Xtandi and get medical help at once if your face, tongue, lip, or throat start swelling. Tell your doctor at once if you faint, have a seizure, quickly worsening headache, decreased alertness, confusion, vision problems, chest pain or discomfort, or shortness of breath. Xtandi can cause harm to an unborn baby or miscarriage. Use birth control during and 3 months after Xtandi. Common side effects include muscle and joint pain, feeling unusually tired, hot flashes, constipation, less appetite, diarrhea, high blood pressure, bleeding, falls, fractures, and headache. Talk to your doctor and visit Xtandi.com.
Curtis, on another area of importance, when you're mayor, how would you handle these demonstrations and disorders that we have seen in the last few years, particularly under de Blasio and under this current mayor? What would you do about that?
Well, I'm an expert. I've been arrested in acts of civil disobedience, as you're all aware.
How many
you want to
times?
demonstrate?
How many times have you been arrested? Tell us that.
81. In fact, given the wooden shampoo, concrete facial, and when they take me to Rikers Island, I'm in a dormitory with 40 guys. Oh, Superman is here. You better not go to sleep, pal. Hey, let me see. I was one-eyed Jack. But I've been through this. I haven't been to prison. I visited prisons. I've spoken to prison. But I've been locked up in jails all across the country. So I understand that. But the thing that you have to do, that you must do, without a doubt, is you have to make people take responsibility and stop this nonsense on being so dependent on government. We're always disappointed. You'll be disappointed in Trump. You'll be disappointed with Barack Obama. It doesn't matter. There are no saviors. There are no Mashiachs. If it's not getting done by government, you have to get the people to do it. That's how the Guardian Angels came about. The city wasn't delivering. We filled the void. You can encourage that instead of discouraging that. And unfortunately, we do that all along the way. volunteerism is a dirty word. People put it down in the communities. What are you a schmuck or putz for? You volunteer? Who's going to help you if you get hurt? What are you? No, we have to promote that. You'd be surprised. Americans, they're willing to volunteer to almost do anything. We're too dependent on government. Way too dependent.
Getting back to the demonstrations and disorders, how would you handle it?
Not hard to get a permit.
Right.
Takes about a day. You can't just walk up and down the streets like they do now. If you're going to use a bullhorn, you get a permit. They give you a permit within a day, but they don't even go to get a permit. They think they can just parade in the streets. No, you box them in. This is where you have to exercise your right of free speech. If you want to go to another place tomorrow, you apply for a permit. In fact, they have so many lawyers now at One Police Plaza who do nothing all day but get paper cuts, from stapling papers. Have them at the location. If they want to get a permit for tomorrow at a different location, get it right there.
Yeah, but the problem arises when you have a spontaneous demonstration where the police department has no notice. It just happens. That's a different story. There's no time for permits.
Well, you see, you lock them up. And you keep them there a little while. They go in there and they say to the CEO, "Hey, could I order out a pizza? You have bottled water here." What? They used to give me bologna sandwiches that turn green in the corners, right? That's all you. And they go, "Do you have any mustard or mayonnaise?" I got locked up with 2 guys at the 28th precinct who were shoplifters. They went out and they bought them turkey sandwiches. And the guy complains, "No mayonnaise?" And the cop ran back out for the mayonnaise. I said, "What are you buying them food for? You got stale bologna sandwiches? See, if you make the food better than they get at home, they're going to want to live there."
Now get back to the demonstrations. Designated area, right? You stay in that area. You go out of that area, you get
Give them a lot of
locked
space.
up.
Don't just box them in.
What about the mounted unit? Would you utilize their services?
There's about 86 men and women dedicated to riding horses, and they train way up in the Bronx. I have been in demonstrations where there's the horse and the police officer who can see everything from up on the horse. And then they turn sideways, and it's like it's the equivalent of about 10 cops. And then when they turn the horse and you're obstructing an area and the horse goes, all of a sudden everybody runs because they know the horse is going to try. Everyone's afraid of these horses. You ask them to disperse, that's all you need. And they know how to make that horse go.
Doing the BLM riots and even riots since then and all this craziness, the horses were there blocks away. Yeah. They never gave them the permission, the okay to come on in and clean up.
Yeah, you hear them clipping and clopping on their way in.
But they weren't utilized, right?
It works.
But they weren't utilized. They should have been utilized. Right. And you would utilize them, right? You would use them.
But everybody loves horses. Except when the horse charges you. We don't grow up with horses in New York City, except if you're a degenerate gambler and you lose all your money playing at Aqueduct or Belmont, right? Oh, I did. Oh, I studied the racing form. I got it all. And meantime, my Aunt Lucy says, "I looked at that horse. He talked to me." And my Uncle Vincenz would say, "What do you mean he talked to you?" And she'd always win. And my Uncle Vincent, the butcher, he'd always lose. And then he owed a vig to the Bonanno crime family where they promised to bend his leg and stuff it in his pocket if he didn't pay. That's the only horses we know in New York City.
Now, Curtis, you become mayor.
Yes.
What would be your plan to recruit police officers?
Oh, police. Right now, it's very difficult. The morale is so low. You really got to go out there and you got to explain how they can be cops. Because right now, many of them, what it used to be. Father would recommend the son and the daughter. And now I'm seeing there are none of those referrals. So you really got to go outside of your normal recruiting area, and you got to explain to them what the job requires now, because they come in, they're all idealistic. They want to make a difference. I've seen the cadets graduate Madison Square Garden. They're taking pictures with their family. And then all of a sudden, they're a year or two on the job, and they realize they can't do anything. And everything is negative. And they get no backups from the DAs. And their bosses are only interested in stats. So they make a collar. For instance, had a guy just graduated the academy down on Canal Street where they sell all the knockoffs, right? He made a collar because they had ripped off some tourists. He brings him into the 5th precinct. The guy goes, "What are you doing?" "I just arrested them. They ripped off the tourists. I got the people from Philly here." But, "No, we don't make arrests of them." So now he goes, what's the point of me being out there? I have the victims. They're willing to come in. They're tourists. We don't want to scare off the tourists. These are bad knockoffs. No, we don't want it. So naturally, as a young cop, your morale is shot, and then you start marking time until you can retire. So you gotta let them know they can be cops and what they can do and what they can't do.
Well, first of all, do you know the requirement? What's the cutoff with the age to come on the job? It used to be 30. I don't know if it's still 30. I don't know if, do you know that, Captain?
It was 29.
29. Maybe you lift that to 35, 38 maybe to come on the job. Also, retirement, mandatory retirement, 63. Maybe make it 65 like the New York City Fire Department.
Absolutely. You know? Look, cops get to retire too early. Look, 20 years, really? And then at 48 years old, they got an ice cream shop in Port St. Lucie, Met spring training game. They get 2 incomes, a boatload of benefits for life. Come on, 48 retired. I'm 70 years old. I took a licking and I'm still ticking.
But even with the pension, it's not enough to retire. Everyone gets, like myself, to get a
secondary income.
Second career.
But why would you want someone to retire in the prime of their life? They now have 20 years of experience.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
They're better than any rookie cop. Right. They know all the ins and outs.
But why are they leaving at 20 or 25?
They're leaving even before they hit 20. Because
now
they're realizing it's not worth it.
So in my day, when we had plenty of overtime, I loved overtime. You'd have to tell me when to go home because I loved overtime. That's how we pay our bills, right? Now these kids, they get so much overtime, they get burnt out. So my son's, on the job, and some of his friends with 2-3 years on the job quit. Now in my day, you resigned to go to the Nassau County Police for more money, better quality of life, or the fire department, better job at the time. Now, kids are quitting because they're burnt. They're just going back to school or going into what they originally took in school, whatever their major was. That's what's happening. Kids are just quitting because they're getting burnt out because there's nobody there. So, again, guys, my generation, you'd have to tell us, wake us up, say, you got to go home.
2 things. First 5 years, cops are living on their mom's sofa, they Castro convertible in the living room. They can't afford anything the first 5 years. Then some of them have families, they have kids. If you have forced overtime on them, the problems in the home. Look, I've had multiple relationships. I'm paying for that in court every day. But you got to have harmony at home. If the cop doesn't have a harmonious home with the wife or the husband or the kids or their partners or whatever it is, it's going to affect their ability to be a good cop. And I don't think the department cares about that anymore. It's forced overtime. Imagine you would have to work 6 days a week, 12-hour shifts. Then you come home and you got to deal with whoever's there that's waiting for you. And they're like, oh, why don't you want to be at home? They're forcing me to do this work.
Steve, what would your suggestion be to recruit?
Well, first of all, how long is the academy now?
6 months.
6 months. There's the beginning of the problem. And I believe the beginning of many problems, I think the police have got to be part of our culture rather than some separate alien entity that has invaded our culture, which is how it's treated right now, right? Right? Cops are like the enemy, or something to be feared or something to be, we need to make the police part of our culture again, like when we grew up, And I think 6 months is not even close to what it should be. I think it probably should be closer to 2 years, year and a half, 2 years, because I believe this is a big conversation. But I never saw. We had respect for our local cop when we grew up. There was never any gun use. You didn't see guns. But they were, you weren't going to mess with a cop, So I believe there should be at least 6 months, if not a year, of significant, we talked about this last time, significant martial arts training, all the martial arts, before a policeman ever uses a gun, touches a gun, okay? Mm-hmm. And then once they are assigned a gun, there should be unlimited amount of use on a range, which is not the case now, correct? You have a limited amount of time on a range, a limited amount of bullets you can use, and then we expect them to be Gene Autry in the middle of a fight, right? Well, why'd you kill the guy You know, why didn't you shoot him? The famous movie problem. Why didn't you shoot him in the leg? Yeah, well, that whole right. Yeah. Well, come on. So first of all, this is multiple. I'm talking about several different things here, but basically, you want to spend that first year not only learning martial arts and from boxing to all the way down, but also integrating into the local culture. Finding ways to. In other words, the police should be more than just something that comes in when there's a problem. They should be dealing with the neighborhood, and they should be like the father figures of the neighborhood. And this requires a little bit more education in terms of a psychological, how to deal with people. Basically, so they're learning not only martial arts, they're learning how to deal with people in problem situations like domestic situations. Learn to be part of the neighborhood you're going to be in. And so I think that's where the problems begin. And then I would just raise the salaries first of all. I mean, anybody who's out there risking their life every day needs to be well paid. Not have to stay on a mother's sofa, okay? And cut. If we have enough police, you won't have to do the overtime. And if the salary's high enough, you won't have to do the overtime.
Also, Stevie, they say they should live in the city.
What's what I mean?
What are they going to afford? A box?
That's it.
A closet?
Well,
and by the way, they'd have to drive 3 hours out in order to find affordable housing.
Yeah, that's.
And then they say, well, you better not live in Pennsylvania. Well, guess what? The Poconos is about the only affordable place you can find.
So how do you feel about that? Cops coming from, say, on a job from PA or Jersey?
If you don't lower the cost of housing for cops, and other than say, we'll give you a spot in a public housing project, are you out of your freaking minds? You're going to need a precinct to protect them. They're going to say, hey, you collared me. You collared my dad. It's like, you want to have a home of your own. You want to be able to pay a reasonable mortgage. We subsidize everything in this world, but the only time we honor the cops is when they die. Oh, they all come out, the politicians. Oh, I have to hear this story by Eric Adams again. I put a bulletproof vest on for 22 years. Hey, pal, it's not about you. It's about the family and the dead police officer. That's the only time we honor the cops, when they're dead, and then it's too late.
We're talking about affordable housing. There should be a certain amount of affordable housing delegated, determined for the police. I mean, simple as that. And it should be a regular thing. And then, you graduate from it to the next level of housing as your salary increases or whatever. But the two areas of affordable housing right now that bothers me is the police, first of all. Second of all, young people who coming in for artistic and cultural reasons. This town used to be, our identity in New York was our culture, okay? Broadway, acting, movies, music. The arts, people shouldn't take the arts as some sort of luxury item. The arts are an essential part of a quality of life, okay? And it affects everybody, whether you know it or not, subconsciously or not. The arts is the heartbeat of our city. And we're no longer encouraging that. And the amount, the cost of housing is keeping young people out of here. So we need to designate a certain amount of affordable housing for the cultural arts to make sure that flourishes, and also for police so they can live in the neighborhoods where they're going to be.
Well, perfect example, high schools, right? You used to have the orchestra and band. I would see the kids taking the instruments home to practice. They would lend you the instrument. Remember, always the smartest kid in the school had to play the oboe. What the hell is an oboe? Why is it always the smartest kid that got the oboe, right? Who the hell would want to spend a career playing the oboe? The Philharmonic Orchestra, Madame Trudeau here, she's the oboe. They used to, I remember in Bildersee Junior High School, PS 114, Canarsie High School, they gave you the instruments to take home. Now, you know what they give you? Grief, agita. They've discontinued orchestra, discontinued band, discontinued chorus.
Yeah.
They have maybe one play a year, one musical a year.
It's terrible.
Everything is sports. Sports. Guess what? Most kids are not into sports. I was into athletes. You know, you had the jocks, you had the heads, and then you had the guys who were in AV squad doing LSD. They were in like a different world. But you had the different groups. There weren't that many athletes. There aren't that many young people into sports. We keep shoving this. They're more into cultural ideas, and we need to feed that. We need to make that available to kids.
The No Child Left Behind legislation, the federal legislation, killed all musical instruments, in the entire public education. That's why we started our curriculum to deal with. We teach history through music.
Why don't you tell us about that foundation?
Well, just to keep arts in the DNA of the public education system, we started teachrock.org, which is we give the teachers tools to teach history through music. We integrate the arts. The arts should not be a separate class. Art needs to be integrated into science, into math, technology, and engineering, and so we do that. And we do it for free. We license music and we license video worldwide, and we give it to teachers for free. We have 75,000 teachers teaching it right now, and it's been very, very successful because kids, they relate to the arts a little easier when you're young rather than the precision required for math and science. People are not that comfortable with it when they're young.
Do they still give the cheese box out, the accordion? For those of us that are part Polish, we'd say, could I have an accordion? I want to be like Bobby Vint, the cheese box. They look at you like, what the hell are you talking about, cheese box?
Well, we're not going to get instruments into the schools anytime soon, so we're trying other ways to do that. But at least we are able to teach history through music, and we're having a big success with that.
Here in New York City?
All through every 50 states. Okay. We're in England. We're all over the place. And it's been very, very successful because we just need to, in the arts, there's no wrong answers, okay? Whoever your favorite band is, that's the right answer.
Well, remember, Bill Clinton's political career was dead after that Democratic conventional speech in Atlanta. He shows up on Arsenio Hall. He's got the shades, the saxophone. Oh, my God. The guy was born again because his mother got him to learn to play the saxophone at a young age. She's a single mother, and she said, you have to have culture, music. He'd always whip that out when he needed it, and all of a sudden, cool daddy-o.
Yeah, he became a human being all of a sudden.
Exactly. Yeah. Crazy.
It's true.
So, Stevie, when Curtis becomes mayor, on his first day on the day of his inauguration, what would you like him to do? His first day in office.
As comptroller, when he assigns me when he makes me the comptroller and I control the money.
Well, that's a good thing because the cops will get paid finally. The cops will get paid finally.
We're not going to have any problems anymore. The money is going to be going to all the right places. I don't know. We better start with the governorship, I think. I don't know if we can get enough done right here. Okay. You know what I'm saying? I've tried to explain this to politicians, and they don't really get it because they're not on the street. They're not on the street like you guys were, and still are, and I am, I'm on the street all the time, and I walk to my office and I'm, I see what's going on. And if you see what's going on, you want to do something about it. Okay, I'm just tired of the same problems year after year after year. No solutions, Everybody talks about solutions, but nobody actually fixes anything.
I think, Stevie, the thing is people distrust all politicians. They think they're on the take. Everybody can be bought. I think maybe the highest compliment was paid to me just this past week on the radio. Two of my enemies, political enemies, guys that I've had beef with, a Republican, Joe Borelli, and Arthur Aidala, the lawyer, Democrat, Borelli, a Republican, said, Curtis can't be bought. You can't buy him. He's honest. We don't have honesty because the politicians are always looking to be wine-dined in the parking lot. They spend all their time on their phone shaking down contributors. It's extortion, and it's pay for play. So that you, Stevie, if you weren't Stevie Van Zandt, you were just a homeowner, Stevie Van Zandt calls up This is what they do, because I've had relationships with some of these people, so I see it on the inside. The mother of my two youngest sons, is he registered in the party? Did he make a contribution? Did he vote? If that's not, if they don't check off any of the boxes, they introduce you to Mr. Click. Click. It's a business politics. That's what it is. Millions and millions of dollars get raised. Do you think these people give because they believe in what you're doing? They want access. So the little guy, the little gal get no access, and they get frustrated. So then they think all politicians are crooks. Even people come up to me, I love you, Curtis, but now that are you a politician? I said, did I kiss my first baby? Yes. Did I shake my first hand? Yeah, I'm a politician. I can't respect you anymore because you're going to become a crook. Am I a crook now? No, but you will be. See, the perception is that whether Republicans or Democrats, they're all for sale. We have to undo that. And the way you undo that is people go into office as selfless servants. When they leave, it's not because they served themselves. They go in, they come out millionaires. You know, is that remember that movie in India? Want to become a millionaire? Yeah, get elected to office. You go in, you're rubbing nickels together, throwing them around like manhole covers, and you come out and you have a whole portfolio. It's Republicans and Democrats. Insider trading information. You know, it's sort of like you scratch my belly, I scratch yours. And average people, they see this, so they lose faith in the political system. We need to get people running for office who know this is not a place to profit. Everybody kisses your ass when you're in office, right? All of a sudden, the judge is here, the restaurant guy, the judge. I said, that's a traffic judge there. Oh, but he's a judge. He's very prestigious. And the traffic judge tells the guy, I want that. Oh, the judge. I said, what kind? It ain't Judge Judy here. The hell you get? It's a traffic court judge. Because everybody gets impressed, you know, when you're an elected, or maybe he can do me a favor. Maybe I may be coming before that judge. Treat him like normal, everyday, average people. You're back in steerage like everybody else. You want to be in first class? Show me what you've done for us, and maybe we might consider it.
Same thing in Washington, by the way. All right, they spend between a third and half of their time. Our politicians, our Congress, a third and half their time raising money. All right, so the real answer is getting money out of politics. It's a whole nother discussion. But, you know.
Well, for instance, if I'm lucky enough to get elected, first announcement, I'm not raising any money to run for re-election because, you know, I'm running out of time, but I'm going to run for re-election. If I can't get elected, being on TV every day, getting my message out for free at taxpayers' expense, I need to go get a job hanging wallpaper. I really do. I mean, what the hell do you have to raise money? If you've been a good mayor, people will elect you. If you've been a lousy mayor, you got to raise millions of dollars to do what I call tricknology, to be able to promote propaganda that says, no, you thought I was bad, but I'm really good. Millions of dollars. No. If you get elected into office, you should not be able to raise any money. In fact, if you were running against me, we should give you all the money because nobody's going to know who you are. Stevie Van Zandt, they know him. But your average guy or gal wanting to run, if there's any fundraising, it goes to the challengers. The incumbent has everything on his side. 98% of the incumbents get reelected. And some of them can't chew gum and think at the same time. But once they're in there, it's just one big fraternity and sorority.
You know, Stevie, as we know, rock star, legend, Hall of Famer, right? Sopranos. You know, you've been in movies, you've been in TV shows, you have a lot of projects going on. But the best title that you have is really you're pro law enforcement. You really support law enforcement, and that's what I just want to say thank you on behalf of law enforcement throughout the world and all our listeners, because you've over the past 9 years have raised over $2 million for the NYPD Widows and Children, as well as Arms Wide Open. Arms Wide Open, folks who don't know that organization, it's run by Merritt Rowley and Danny Sprague. They're police officers, and it's a foundation that raises funds for police personnel, doesn't have to be in New York City, who have children with special needs. And thanks to Stevie and his foundation, Little Steven's Policeman's Ball, which we have an event every year, and we also have a golf outing now. And maybe cigar event soon. But in the meantime, bottom line is I want to thank you because a lot of people don't know that. They say Stevie Van Zandt, born to run all this, rock and roll stuff. But at the end of the day, what's really important is you really support law enforcement. And I want to thank you.
Well, believe me, it's the way I can show my gratitude. And I say that on behalf of many artists and many, actors. I come from, as you know, I'm an independent law and order liberal. Okay, so I've always believed that the political parties are nothing but football teams. Trying to win the game rather than take care of the people. But we have to deal with it because it's a two-party system, and we got to deal with that. But I've always encouraged people to register independent and think independently, issue by issue. And when it comes to law enforcement, every time I say something positive about law enforcement on Twitter, it's right away, oh, what are you, MAGA? You must be, when did you become a Republican, I'm like, has everybody lost their friggin' minds at this point? In order to be in favor of law enforcement, I have to be a Republican or MAGA, God forbid, okay?
Right.
I'm like, something is going really wrong here, really wrong, because everybody needs law enforcement, obviously, and we should be all supporting law enforcement, and that's why, I think that more time in the academy, spending time integrating the police into the communities, I think is got to happen. We cannot continue to have the police force be this alien, separate entity. It should be of and by the community. I think Curtis was saying the same thing in terms of where you live. We got to make it. We got to make that affordable housing happen if that's what it takes. But anyways, I just do what I do, and of course, we do it together, and I'm proud of that. I'm very proud of that, and
thank you.
It's very difficult. Very difficult whether Democrat, Republican, whatever. It's a struggle every year to find the money for these two very, very worthy charities. It's amazing how few people want to support law enforcement. So there's a marketing problem. There's an identity problem going on here that's deep. All right, that's very deep. That we got to address it because nobody wants to give to the police every year. I got to beg people. I'm like, regardless of what you may have criticism of the police, but what about these charities? What about these kids? Certainly they're worthy of your support, and it's a struggle every single year. So we need big changes in terms of our relationship with law enforcement. That's for sure. Why should it belong to one party and not another? That's just insane to me. Nuts.
Well, it's time for us to end this great session. And Curtis, now that we know you're going to run for mayor, can you tell the world that you're going to announce shortly?
Well, I announced the day I lost to Eric Adams. Everybody knows that. I've been running for mayor ever since. I do the work I've always done, down in the suites, down in the streets, down in the subways. I'm the people's mayor. You see what it says on my back, Stevie.
So when will you officially announce?
Early February. I'll get in right on time like I did the last time, and then I'll have to face probably the winner of a Democratic primary. It's sad we don't have a lot of Republicans. It's like an 8-to-1 ratio in New York. You have to have a two-party system. They keep each other honest. If you have all Republicans, they're not going to be honest. You have all Democrats. You need the checks and balances. That's what democracy is about.
So, Steve, we're going to have a new mayor.
So, Stevie, here on Cop Talk today, are you going to give Curtis your endorsement?
I'm going to wait to read the platform, as we all should, right?
Yep.
We can't
Absolutely.
This is not about a cult of personality here, okay? Even though we like them personally.
That's a song. Hold on a second. What are you going to break out into the song, a cult of personality?
Just because we like them personally, we got to read the platform, okay?
We'll make sure Stevie's the first one to get it.
And then we'll decide. But there's I like the fact that he's on he's on the street, you know, and like I say, you know, who's more in New York than this guy?
Well, I'm noticing Stevie's got a little utrai color, a little earring there. So we settle this on the bocce court. We'll see how really you are bonded to the Italians if you can play bocce.
All right.
Two real New Yorkers, you know. Gentlemen, last words?
Hey, guys like Stevie, you know, they speak from the heart. He doesn't have to be here. He doesn't have to do these things. He's in a world that's different. But every time I've met him before, he's always interested in people. Whereas you have a lot of folks who achieve a lot of notoriety, they forget their roots. This man's never forgotten his roots.
True.
When you die, because we all will die, he will not forget his roots. And that's imperative when you live your life.
True. Stevie?
I wish you guys all the luck in the world. You've made it 2 years, huh?
Yeah, 2 years. Thanks.
Right, so,
guys like you and Curtis. You going back out on tour? Or?
We got a couple of dates to do in the summer.
Okay.
I think 15 or 20 shows in Europe.
Oh, Europe, okay.
Yeah. And then I'm hoping to get back on TV. I got a new agency and talking to people right now about a new TV series. You know, if something comes up in the movies, I'll do that. But I like TV. So I'm going to try and do that, and we'll do our shows next summer, and then we'll see what happens musically. The teachrock.org will continue. Anybody interested, look it up, teachrock.org. Any teachers can have it for free. It's extremely successful and useful. And hopefully I'll finish this political book because we need lots of solutions. You know, again, the police problem is not just, you know, police, it's our prison system. Okay, no prisoner should ever see another prisoner. Okay? I have a whole new prison design. They have their own outside area. Every cell has its own outside area. You're dealing with computers and AI for job training and education and psychological help. And eventually you earn the right to have a human being come into the cell and deal with that person by person. But no prisoner should ever see another person. It's a recidivism factory. Okay, I mean criminals call prison college for a reason, you know. Yeah. So I mean, no prisoner should ever see another prisoner. You know, you stop all the drug dealing. You stop the criminal education. You stop the rape. You stop the threats. You stop all of that. You know, that all goes away, and we actually start to rehabilitate. God forbid, right? We actually have a usefulness in our terms of our rehabilitation. So the prison system needs to be completely changed among these other, you know, the transitional villages need to be established for the homeless. You know, we need real solutions, and we need to begin that now because our country at this point is falling apart.
Well, gentlemen, thank you very much. It's only rock and roll, but we like it.
Yeah, baby.
And Curtis, good luck to you in the maze race. And when you announce, we look forward to that announcement. Stevie Van Zandt, and Curtis Sliwa, thank you so much, Captain.
I think this was a great session, one of our best.
Thank you, Captain.
And I know
thank you guys. Thank you for being here. I know you're very busy. I mean, I know you practically live here, but you're very busy.
Give us a designation. You know, we 5-star top shelf. That's all.
Absolutely, baby.
And thank you for your service.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to thank everyone to listen to another episode of Cop Talk. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe to Cop Talk at Cop Talk WABC. That's at Cop Talk WABC. Until next time, God bless you, God bless America, God bless our military, and God bless law enforcement throughout the world. Be safe out there.
And besides listening to this podcast on your computer, you can view it on YouTube.
Thanks, Cap. Thank you.
Hello,
Hello, folks. Larry Kudlow here. Pay attention, because China is leading the largest anti-American alliance since World War II. One that's already dumped U.S. bonds, grabbed 43 million acres of our farmland, and is plotting to dethrone the dollar. That's why IRA and 401k savers are protecting their savings with gold. Please go to freegoldguide.com/Kudlow or just call 800-621-3908 for your free gold guide on how to protect your wealth with gold 100% tax-free.